All right, yeah. Finishing this last little bit off. So yeah, let's go.
In the time frame, and then it happens.
Do you know that?
You know, I just got to
Yeah,
quickly
yeah,
relate a story about being on time. When I first joined the band,
yeah, yeah.
well, what's the regime here, Frank? Well, in terms of rehearsal, he says, well, you guys get together for about 4 hours, and then I generally blow by about 6. You get in at 2.
Yeah.
You practice, and you know, there's no like conductor or anything. You just Terry sort of runs you guys through it, and you'll work on a few things, and then I get there at 6, and then you guys take a little dinner break when you, or no, we'll rehearse. Then we'll take a dinner break about 8. Then we'll finish up usually about 11, 10 or 11. He says, okay, good.
In
So
time to get home for
yeah, right,
Mary Hartman
right,
and all
for
that.
after news
Yeah.
TV.
So he basically
So-
was
so- no, but
6 to 10, 6 to 11, 5 hours.
For him,
Yeah,
for
for
us,
him.
it was 2.
Right.
You know, so it was
Yeah.
eight, 9 hour job
Yeah.
a day.
Yeah.
Most people don't realize how much we
So he's
rehearse.
describing this.
So anyway, so the reality of this equation turns
Yeah.
into this: the first day of rehearsal, I get there at 2 and nobody's there, and it's okay with me, man,
Yeah.
because I got all these toys to play with,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I got charts, and I'm
Yeah.
having a great time. So anyway, Terry gets there about 4:30. You know, I didn't say anything, but we start rehearsing, and
4:30. He's
No,
two
no.
and a half hours late. 2:30.
no, check it out. I said, Terry, what time does rehearsal start? And he said, oh, here's the game plan, Morris. Like, Frank usually shows up at 6. We start rehearsing like about 5 or so. You'll find us over at the Nicodel. You know, it's just like we're playing when Frank gets here. That's what we have to remember. We're playing when Frank gets here.
Oh, that's
So-
all. Yeah. So he
I
had
mean,
a cheat
some,
factor.
some days if we had more work, we'd start like at
Yeah.
4. But I'd always get there
Never
at 2
start.
because I loved like making tapes and experimenting, and I mean
Well,
it
you
was
were
fun for
Frank.
me.
You're a workaholic.
I was a
You were the
workaholic
mirror
at
image
that point.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was so funny how Terry. It seemed so like irreverent
That
the
was-
way that he said, you know, like, well, we just as long as
We're
we're playing when he
we're
gets
playing
here.
good. It's always.
He says, because trust me, every
For someone like him, Frank Zappa was like, you couldn't ask for more. To be as creative and wanting to try new things, but then also actually having the things there to use. Like, Zappa's got crazy equipment. Like, his band is huge. So he's got every little, like you said, all toys that he can just mess around with. If you're this type of person, Frank Zappa is a dream. Like you couldn't ask for a better uh, boss, basically.
change.
When he shows up. No, it's so much like it's so relevant to what Frank says. He says, "I'm not friends with the guys in the band. The
That's
boss.
right.
You can never like the boss. That whole thing." And of course, you guys were like, or they were like employees. They used to smoke dope behind the scenes on the road, the grandmothers and that. But in this case, the guys are like employees, jerking off, taking time off, like like happens everywhere, right?
Right.
Now the time factor, but
So you see that totally changed the next incarnation of the band.
right, because
Frank
Terry
immediately
Terry had to go in a sense. He was slacking off too much.
in a sense,
Yeah.
yes. But the whole sensibility of the way things were structured changed after that.
You couldn't do that anymore.
We-
That's what you're going to say, right?
Right. Frank instituted the concept of Clone-meister, who
Yeah.
got paid a little bit more. Everybody kind of hated you. And type thing, you know, like the band would rehearse from 2 to, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
and then it was structured. And then if you were an old timer in the band, it was looser, and the
Yeah.
puppies would have to, you
Yeah,
know, they'd
yeah.
have to rehearse a little bit harder, so you'd come in and maybe an hour later, but whatever, you know. But it
Seniority.
changed. It changed rank half,
Yeah.
right? So, but the thing is that that was the line of demarcation. That band, it was never a loose rehearsal anymore. It was, you know, brass tacks.
That's during the '78, the beginning of
From-
the cells
from-
and the
from-
germs. That point
exactly,
on the tour.
exactly.
In other words, so when it came back after '78, you come back. You're now rehearsing.
Right, there was
situation.
always a clone
Then
meister
it was
then.
new. So it started in
Right.
the summer of '78 or something
Correct,
like that.
correct.
Now what? I think I forgot. Now what? Why did we bring this up? That the time.
We were talking about just be on time.
Oh, great. Thank you.
You bet.
Because
I'm glad you got
yeah, no, that was very important. Is that time and space, blah blah blah? Do you know that Frank disagreed with Einstein? This is the amazing.
I wouldn't doubt it, but
Yeah,
clue me in
yeah.
this realm.
E equals mc squared. Space and time are interchangeable like mass and energy. Okay,
Right.
In simple terms.
Okay.
Well, Frank in an interview says, I think it might have been in that Don Men thing, 1992, because I just saw it on the internet, and someone quoted it, and he goes, "So I disagree with Einstein that space and time are interacting." He says time is the outer sphere where all things are happening, all time's happening all at once. The inner sphere of space is a Mobius strip.
Mm-hmm.
So he re-separates time away from space.
Mm-hmm.
Einstein didn't do that. He had them
intertwined.
Intertwined. Like
That's right.
they're both components of the Mobius strip.
That's right.
And it's a very interesting concept. But that's the incredible arrogance and genius of Frank. That he says, well, you guys, yeah, he built a bomb, so what? But he had it wrong.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, he had it all wrong. And then when you know that quote, it fits with his whole thing of
totally.
the upper and the lower, and time is all time. It's the unknown zone where all things are happening. And in this immediate middle zone where UFOs come in, that's an effect of the modulating of above and below frequencies, which is the time zone where everything's happening. And then he says that's why he had a secular materialist view in a way of psychic, that someone who's just zapping, going out of the Mobius strip of space and zapping into a time and experiencing because it's already happening.
Mm-hmm.
You know, talk about going in. Now we're coming full circle, which I like to have in my dialogues. Your opening line was Frank was the beyond. Well, that was time in the sphere.
You know, musically,
and that's why you had to be on time.
absolutely.
The win factor.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So, do I rest my case that was Frank? What? How could a medium? This guy doesn't even know Frank. How could he fake that?
That's
You know
right.
what I'm saying?
That's right. I just wanted to say that it seems a bit obvious, but to me, quintessentially, Inca Roads is a tremendous manifestation of that.
The song.
The song Inca Roads, to me.
Well, you know what? Gail, you go into it, but Gail says that's her favorite song, and Gail's always talking code. I think I give her. She's been around. She's an insider.
She's not always talking code, but sometimes she slips out of it.
Slips out of it, and by
Did
saying.
you know what I just said?
Well, I'm trying to figure out. She says Inca Roads is her favorite song. Is that slipping out of code?
No, that's code.
Okay, so now elaborate why that's real.
But here's slipping out of code.
Oh, okay.
Here's slipping out of code.
We're getting real esoteric, eh?
Yeah, but I don't want to belabor this because I know
No.
we have to move on. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that number one, Frank was famous for writing mini operas in songs. Mini operas in songs.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like verses would be analogous to arias, choruses would be analogous to recitatives. You know what I mean?
Right.
And Inca Roads to me is quintessential. It has all of the elements
Of an opera.
of. Well, I'm saying that a song, say like Punky's Whips,
Right.
is like a mini opera.
I see.
Brown Shoes Don't Make It is like an opera.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
So
It
Inca
can
Roads is not.
No, Inca Roads is as well, but the point I'm trying to make is that to me it's like the quintessential song of Frank. It has everything there, stylistic.
In light of the UFO quote.
In light of the UFO,
Yeah.
the whole thing.
I have to say that for me, that was like my Frank Zappa badge of honor. The first time I listened to Inca Roads, it was just like, oh, what is this? Like, I've never heard nothing like this. And then carried on doing Zappa, watched documentaries, watched him talk, listened to a lot more of his music. Then going back to when I went back to Inca Roads, I was like, really? Like, this is nothing, like, in terms of the Zappa world. And that was kind of my thing where I felt like I'm on the right track with Zappa. Do you know what I mean? Because, yeah, revisiting Inca Roads wasn't as manic to listen to because of all the other Zappa I'd done. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've done all sorts of Zappa stuff. But, yeah, anyway, let's go.
And then, like the Guacamole Queen. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Did a vehicle. It's a question. It's
yeah.
his
Or
ultimate
it's
question.
just some Indians upon a hill. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like.
That's his time. You're right. That's his question.
It just
Did
came to me as we're talking about
Yeah.
this that I wanted to say that to me it's all, and I'm not talking code here. I'm breaking
Yeah.
code.
In other words, you just realize why it is through our conversation. It is to you, and it fits. That
yeah,
it's the
it's
key
the essence.
thing.
It's
Yeah.
it's the essence
Because-
thing. And then you have the glory of instrumentally, not even a lyric on this. Wa-da-dee-da-doo-day, wa-da-doo-day.
Yeah.
That
Mm.
is
He's
Look,
almost.
I don't
it's
necessarily
emotional.
believe in a heaven or a hell, but if there is a heaven where everything is peace and pure,
Yeah.
that theme embodies it.
That's
and,
right.
And yet it starts off so like, you know, like out there.
Right,
You know what
right,
I mean?
right.
It's like you're
Chaos.
landing. You're landing
yeah.
in.
You're entering the alien,
and-
the unknown.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the thing is that to me, it's all. When I first started listening to Frank, that album, to me, was like the best album he had ever done up to that point.
Yeah.
It just had everything: fidelity, substance. You know, like
The
way
latest
production of
technology,
it,
yeah.
the latest technology, and brilliant lyrics, and all of the songs were like hits to me. You know what I mean?
That's
Every
right,
single
yeah.
one. It wasn't just that it was a cool Zappa song. These were like monstrous anthems. These songs, and it's always still.
And you think of it, because as you starts off bizarre, but then if we do find out there's life in other places and there is a UFO, if that whole thing is real, then it's a shift for mankind where we move into a new dimension. And it's a happy effect, which is that riff you just said, that heavenly. Well, do it again. But
I want to reiterate this though, just the way the structure of the song is. It starts did a vehicle lyrically. It's got that, okay. Then you have instrumentally. Okay, an augmentation of that.
Right.
Then you have it's the same thing that it just keeps
different climates or different effects of the intercommunication
of the same word.
Yeah,
of the
same
same
word.
Macro
Word.
nutrients.
That's
you know
right.
what I mean?
Which and then it
Or
comes, then
DNA,
do the
whatever.
happy part when we now know the happy resolution of the mystery is in the sound as you just did it. What's the happy? You know that part
The
the happy part. You just did it.
It's instrumental.
Yeah.
And it's like just on the record, it's just marimba. But obviously, when we played it, it's like it's just speed of light. And everybody wants to play the lick instead of just root. you know?
Right, right.
That was another difference between the later bands and the early bands. Is that in the early bands, it was like the guys didn't want to play the licks, man, because like Frank, what the fuck are you writing for us? You know what I mean? It was just
I mean,
like
they couldn't. You mean?
I didn't say they couldn't. I would say they would prefer maybe not to play them all the hard licks.
Right, okay.
They were challenged. But for us, we were like young Olympians, man,
That's
and it was
right.
just like write harder shit.
Yeah,
for us,
harder.
right?
Yeah.
Did I give that story about the middle part of Jumbo when Frank he's looking
Well, I heard it.
with
You
the hands.
yeah,
Yeah, that's like
which
a
is
classic example,
Now listen, this is that is we'll end on this point, I guess. But that gave me a big insight about Frank just listening this morning, because the point is, Finnegan's Wake is not a book. He has all forms of media. He's trying to paint a movie and eventually a television set.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, Frank, this has come full circle. He's not a musician. And he played tricks on musicians. Your musical conventional training. So I tried to read it. And he
when
was
a baby could do it.
yeah,
for
yeah.
Christ's sake.
In other words, he was presenting a map to play a football play, and he fooled you, says you think you are what you is. You get beyond your categories of yourself, because
That's
I'm
right.
presenting you a sport thing. That's what that whole story
Mhm.
illustrate that. And listen to Yuha's great interview for what we're talking about, what we're referring to. Okay, Jared. Do you want to say something? Let's give him a last word.
Well,
did we
this
finish?
isn't original, but music is the best.
You know what I said to Frank at the end of that interview, or Bob Marshall did? He goes, I go, and I sort of knew, but I go, so we were just making great, we were going to the mysteries, we were just really talking great for 3.5 hours, and I said, so this conversation will never end. And he goes, oh yes it will. And then he goes, look at Jerry, he's over there, his leg is bobbling, like impatient. And I go, this is a good point to end on. And then we all agreed. After I just said, this will never end. And then within 10 seconds, it's over. That's Frank's shift.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're trying to do here. If we're trying to end, it's very hard. We know Tom and I will continue talking forever because we've just started, right?
Actually, right now I'm going over to Arthur's.
No, I don't mean now. We
Oh.
will continue our dialogue about explaining what happened to you.
Undoubtedly.
What happened to you?
Yeah, what happened to me?
Did a vehicle, going in, did he get brain implanted, with Frank's microchip?
Well, so, I have often thought, are you still running?
Yeah.
Because I had an encounter.
You want this on?
I would like to have it.
Okay, yeah.
Actually, we can have final
Right.
editing
Yeah,
rights here,
right.
but I did have an encounter with a UFO in
Time and place, and can you give a little quick details?
in very quick details. In the fall, it was the Halloween of 1973
Right.
in Litchfield, Connecticut.
Is that middle Connecticut, west, south?
It's in the western part of Connecticut.
Okay.
And I was on a lake called Bantam Lake, driving to a. I don't want to relate the whole story.
Yeah.
But I did see, and I have no qualms in saying 100% certain of a UFO that was.
Had you heard Inca Roads came out in '75?
I had never heard Inca Roads. I heard Inca Roads when I was already in the band a year.
Right, you didn't know, you weren't listening to his albums.
Yeah, I didn't.
Right.
I told you I knew 2 songs.
Right,
I didn't
that's
even hear
right.
an album.
Which I wondered, 2
I
minutes
never
ago
even
about
heard.
that.
I never heard an album. I only knew because Ed Mann wrote out the charts for me. But anyway,
So you had a UFO experience.
I had a UFO experience, and I didn't necessarily come in contact with aliens, but the craft was above me, and there was no doubt in my mind, and it's all been borne out with other people. Even that night, this is when we talked to the state police, it was 4 bandmates and myself going to a New Year's, a Halloween party that we were playing at, a jazz unit I was working with in Connecticut, and
it was confirmed by other witnesses.
23 witnesses that night, and the fact of the matter is that I had no direct contact, but I knew and I felt in my inner self that Jesus Christ, that they're taking something from me. I feel something
Really?
being extracted. I feel like there's something
When
going.
they hovered over you.
They were hovering,
Yeah.
man, and everywhere we went, that the vehicle moved silently, and it
Yeah.
was massive. It was so fucking huge, and it was as tall. It was up like 3 times a telephone pole. I don't know what the distance is,
Yeah.
but it was right there, and it was like a football field right above us.
Ooh.
The whitest light I'd ever seen in my life, and I don't want to get into specifics,
Yeah.
but from that point on, I've always wondered, did they do something to my head
Right.
at that time?
Were
Because
they working for Frank and then zapped? Am I right?
Put us together,
They prepared you for
7
Frank.
years, so 6
'cause
years
Frank
later.
was working for them.
That's it. Always was in the back of my head, and I
As you
still
got
will
to
never
know,
know.
yeah, as you got to know how strange that fucker guy was, Zappa, you said, "Wait a minute,
Mhm.
That's what you mean?"
Mhm. That's exactly
Is
what
he
I mean.
is Frank an alien, or something?
Is he a general in another army?
When I first met him, and he was in the dark on his house, I looked at him. He came walking up the steps like this. I don't know if he did it much, but he walked like a loaf.
Well, he had a
weird
sway
look.
back too,
No, but he walked like Groucho Marx. Remember, he'd go like this,
right.
and he's coming up his steps. He's before the fence, and he's coming up like this. And I'm standing here, and I go, "Hi, Frank," and he's with Gail, and he goes, "Hello," and he stands way. I'm there looking at this guy, and looking up at him, And I started to talk to him, and the absolutely free cover where he has a spiral come his eyes. I swear, this fucking spiral came out at me.
Mm-hmm.
Now this could be all subjective, but I use that as a reference point to add life to the question. Maybe he was an alien or something weird. You know what I mean? Because the spiral, I've never seen anybody give me a spiral.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Frank was working for somebody else.
Oh, Jerry, you wouldn't believe my we developed that this past 2 days.
Well, good, wonderful. I've often thought that he was just a freaking 4-star general of
Right.
somebody else's presidency.
I'm going to end this interview with this statement, which will blow everybody away.
Good.
And it's a great thing. You
We've
have to see
established
part
the
2.
beachhead.
Yeah.
Let's
Where's
blow the
beachhead?
bridge up,
Yeah.
and then let's get the fuck out of Dodge.
There is a reason why Lumpy Gravy is written in his father's name, Francis Vincent Zappa, not Frank Vincent Zappa, because the composer behind the whole Frank Zappa Big Note operation was his father, and his father was military intelligence.
Bingo.
That's who he was
As we say in
working
Italian, basta.
with. Is that right?
It's right, man.
Basta. So that's another topic. We'll do that part 2. We've been developing this case. It's unbelievable. Anyways, isn't it fun?
And Frank did love gunpowder, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. Well, he says he worked with explosives and electricity. Explosive is hardware. Electricity is software.
That's right.
That's the satellite conductor works with both. They run the Madison Avenue warfare on people through imagery, and the hardware warfare through covert and little wars in Grenada and Vietnam.
right.
Hot
That's
and
right.
cold.
That's
And
right.
Frankel, some like it hot, some like it cold. And McLuhan. That's why in my chart, you should look at my chart someday. You have McLuhan and Zappa as equals in a certain phase of the 60s.
Listen, guys, I gotta put a move on it.
All right, man.
So, geez, we're down the bench from 4 to 8 tonight, tomorrow. If you want to come by, continue. Or if you're not, anyways, we'll be there.
From 4
4 to 8 tonight, today.
Yeah. No,
and
that
tomorrow.
that won't work for me.
And we'll be there next Saturday.
You're gonna be out here for a while.
Yeah, another week.
Oh,
so,
cool.
so we're there on the bench from 4 to 8.
Oh, the bench down
Yeah,
at the bench. Yeah,
right near you.
Fucking A.
Yeah,
Tonight and tomorrow.
and Saturday. And you got to talk to Carolyn about this fucking thing. Now here's the punchline. She wears different Frank Zappa T-shirts in the laboratory while working with this incredible new UFO matter, unbelievable matter. And I'm developing my thesis. I want you to read my paper at some point. I did two manifestos. And part one's about Finnegan's Wake, and then part two is about how Frank outdid Finnegan's Wake. And it leads to that Frank was trying to describe this new life matter that Connie is working with. Now that's
You know
gotta,
what?
you
I
gotta
just
ask her about it.
remembered that you in New York you were telling me
I was
something
telling you a bit
about
about
this.
that. Yeah, you gotta come and ask her.
Right.
I'm only half the story.
Hey, is the camera off?
Yeah.
No.
That was on camera?
Yeah.
Oh, that's all.
Yeah. To be fair, if there's anybody that in music that was an alien, but it's kind of funny they said I didn't know that his dad. Did I know that? Maybe I did know actually that his dad was, yeah, military. But it's the same as Jim Morrison. There's quite a few famous people whose, yeah, parents was in the military. So I know Jim Morrison. He like completely cut his family off, and I think it's to do with his upbringing and strict father. But then Jim Morrison's super intelligent person, as well as being like insanely wild. He was a very very smart, well-read person. Um, yeah, there definitely is an effect of the military that the military people have on their kids, for better or for worse. Because when it with Jim Morrison, that his sisters like that, no one had heard from him for ages, and I think it was Jim Morrison's sister, her friend, when had the first Doors album with Jim Morrison on the cover, and said, "Doesn't that look like this guy looks like your brother?" And showed Jim Morrison's sister and was like, "That is my brother." Um, and that's how she found out that he was now a famous person. But yeah, yeah. If there was anybody gonna be a alien, I'd put my yeah, I'd put my life on it being Frank Zappa. I mean, even the name Frank Zappa, even his kids' names Moon and Dweezil, they sound like alien names. Maybe it is. Maybe aliens don't just harvest us for whatever reason they harvest us, but they also make us do things, and maybe aliens set things in motion so that they get to hear the music. Who knows? But yeah, yeah, we finished the interview. Actually went into some places I didn't expect either. I didn't expect him to come out with a UFO story, but then again, Frank Zappa, Tommy Mars. I mean, if anybody's going to have a UFO experience, it should be someone with the last name Mars. But yeah, I was thinking as well the bit where he said about being hunched over. Who is it that did the Willy Wonka? Who played Willy Wonka? I think it's in the original. Where he walks out on a cane, hobbles out, and then rolls, basically drops the cane, and then falls, does a roly poly. And I think, is it Gene? I don't know if it's him playing it, Gene, whatever his name is. But he said that was his idea to do it, and they was the director was like, well, why? And he's like, because from that moment on, no one will know if I'm being truthful or if I'm lying. Maybe Zappa had that himself by hobbling out and standing up straight at the last minute. Puts you in a position where you don't quite know what what's real and what's him playing with you, if you know what I mean. And I definitely think Frank Zappa did play with the world, like they kind of said, because it's very hard to say to someone, there's this great guitar track, great song, you got to listen to it. What's it called? Muffin Man, and people go, and you're like, no, I know, but listen to it. Like it's a absolute banger of a tune, and you've got to. It makes it harder for you to pass Zappa's music on because it's got crazy names. Like I say, Muffin Man. I've mates that would love that track, but then they just would be put off by the fact that it's called Muffin Man. But it's like, so it kind of puts you in like a tricky situation of trying to get Zappa into people's things. And maybe Zappa done that on purpose too. Who knows? But I'd like to have a chat with Zappa. He's definitely someone who, I'd like to, because like from what I've seen of him, you could talk to him about anything. You could just pull up any subject and kind of have a conversation about it, and yeah. But yeah, anyway, that's the reaction. Sweet.